Welcome to another segment of Steal Our Winners. And today I have a new contributor, but one I'm super excited to actually talk to and hear what she brings. Her name is Laura Catella. Let's see, where should I start? The first thing that I think is pretty significant, she might think it's less significant than some of her other accomplishments, but she is the original copy teacher to Stefan Georgi. And that's significant because Stefan has actually done 2 Steal Our Winners already and is well known. And this is the person behind his genius that taught him everything that he knows. She's a veteran 8-figure copywriter. She's started her own beauty line that grew to over 7 figures in the first year. She's the creator of the Diamond Day Mastermind, which I will be at myself. By all means, you should attend if you want to transform, because it's a event about transformation. She's the coach to over 100 copywriters. So Laura, just super excited that you're here, and we've become friends since we met, but super excited that I finally got you here to drop some heat and strategies and tactics on people. So very excited about it.
Thank you so much, Rich. I'm super excited to be here, and man, I sound busy.
You are busy.
I am busy. I love it.
And is there anything else that I didn't include or that you want people to know about you? And then after, either way, you can go there and then also just set up what you want to talk about today.
Okay. I think you included everything, and some stuff might be noted in my presentation that I have.
Cool.
But I will say, Stefan's got a lot of talent all on his own. I don't feel comfortable taking all of the credit, but some of the credit is fine with me. We are going one rung up the ladder to the source. So, okay.
Well, one of the things I've taught every guru is that, that I've worked with, and I've worked with a lot of them, and is part of being a guru is that anything good that happens anywhere near you, you take responsibility for it, because that's what we do, right? So I'm still going to give you credit. Here
we go. So in writing tons of sales copy, chiefing dozens of projects, and coaching hundreds of writers, I've noticed that especially once we get to a certain level, we all have this understanding of what should be included in great copy: dimensionalization, mechanisms, metaphors, so on and so forth. But there are not many very simple strategies that especially business owners who might be quickly tweaking copy, throwing out something for a split test, or even copywriters who are feeling uninspired and not creative. There are not many simple strategies for them to quickly tap into to create these dimensionalized benefits, mechanisms, so on and so forth. So in my teaching of a lot of copywriters, I realized that I need to create, and I want to create, step-by-step methods for them to create these proven elements that win in sales copy. And if you could do all of the things that I'm about to show you in one promo, you'll have much higher odds of success. When you add these to your existing promos, you'll beat your controls, and I have examples of that being done in real time. Sweet. And of course, you'll be able to evaluate copy through a new, hugely valuable lens. So the 5 key things that we're going through today are my dimensionalization 4x3 stack. And I'll move through this a little bit quickly because you'll see it in examples. But this is important because dimensionalization creates a hypnotic, amplified, emotionally resonant effect. It's sort of like storytelling made very, very easy. And surprisingly, a lot of people make mistakes with this, but when you follow my prompts and my process, mistakes.
And maybe it's not necessary to know it now. So if it is, we can skip it. But when I think of dimensionalization, I think about really kind of unpacking something.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you mean? Dimensionalize the benefits, dimensionalize this, dimensionalize that. It's not only means this, it means this and this and this, and that kind of stuff. Right?
Absolutely. Okay. It's like unpacking, peeling the layers of the onion, digging deeper. These are always, I think, about dimensionalization, and my prompts for that will help you get there.
Cool.
I'll also show you my metaphor matrix, because I find that a lot of people think metaphors are this sort of mysterious thing, and you have to be super creative to be able to come up with them. I'll show you the way around that.
Awesome.
And naming conventions. So naming stuff is so important. To give your process a name, of course, you're going to name your product, but to give your mechanism a name is to brand it. somebody has a 3-step system, well, so does my grandma. Like literally every one of my grandma has a 3-step system now. But
Right.
once you put a cool, logical name to that, now I can't get it from my grandma, and I can't get it from anywhere else. And I'll show you how to come up with sexy names that are congruent and not cheesy. I will share my hypnotic loop opening. So a lot of us know about standard loop opening. More on that in a minute, but first, I'll show you how to amp that up quite a bit, which is really useful if you notice drop-off points from your scroll depth analytics or your view time on a VSL. It's literally 2 words you could pop in there to fix that problem. Proven to make prospects consume 69% or more of your sales material, which is my favorite number. And then I will share interiority, which is the fastest and easiest way to create really captivating, more story-based copy without having to be creative. Okay, so let's move
I've never heard that word before.
Yes, it's I find it very useful to give myself structured time to write in interiority. I start with dimensionalizations because nobody has any excuse after they see this, they'll be able to do it. So these are for, as I mentioned, more emotionally resonant storytelling hypnotic copy. So we will either write or notice this base emotion, something like I was losing my hair, some part of the story.
Right.
How do we dimensionalize this? My first prompt for you is what visual image comes to mind? So I think hair in the brush, hair on the shower floor, hair on my clothes, hair on the pillow. I think about different locations to spur more inspiration for additional imagery. So it's like I went from the bed to the shower, like, okay, what happens at work? What happens in my car? This is all generative stuff. Maybe I write 5 or 6 lines of copy like this in a row and it all stays together. Maybe during the editing phase, I break these up and put them in different places. But now I've got so much more abundant source material. And that's all through the visual images.
Right. And like, so, and maybe you get to this in somewhere else, like, so, you know, would you then, like, let's say you came up with those things, right? Where would you put those things? I would imagine you'd precede, like, I was losing my hair, right? Like, so you'd first try and create that visual image, like, you know, and then it's like the way I've always, when I wrote reports, it was revelation before explanation. That was like what I always shot for. Like, can I get them to have the thought before I say it, right? The explanation. Because if they think it before I say it, now I'm just confirming what they're thinking. And then also, it was their thought, right? So like, you know, if you start saying like, I woke up, there was extra hair on the pillowcase. When I took a shower, I looked down at the drain, there's my hair. Like, I saw a friend, he said I was looking a little bit older, whatever, right? Like, and, I looked in the mirror and I noticed like I'm losing my hair and it's coming out a lot faster, right? Like, and hopefully they came to that conclusion before I said it. So like but that's where you would put those visual images?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You would put them before the like declaration of the fact that I'm losing my hair.
And would you do that on all of these? Like, or are there other ones that you wouldn't, you maybe put somewhere else? Like, or all these like making that statement a lot stronger at the end of the day?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and it may be if I'm consciously working in this as an exercise, which is something I teach my writers to do if they're feeling like writer's block, like, okay, well, let's not think about writing a sales letter right now. Let's instead, if you're writing for a hair product, okay, take me through dimensionalizations of losing your hair. And now you've got material that I can plug in wherever we may need. So a lot of this would probably go into, and does go in my example on a live sales letter, of the pain. I'm teasing the transformation of how this problem got solved. And I'm simultaneously building up the agony of how bad it was when I was losing my hair.
Right.
So that anybody who is really going through this problem relates to them. And for people who are starting to get worried about this problem, or maybe they've only maybe they're just starting to see hair loss. Now they could get really afraid of what's going to happen if this problem continues. So we move from visual image to what do you hear? Like you had said, Rich, my friend told me that I'm getting out of shape.
Right.
why do you always wear a hat?
Right.
Take your hat off for the photo.
Right.
And it's helpful if you think about, like, who is this character that's usually a jerk? Huh? And what would they say? So it'd be like, my mother-in-law asked me to take my hat off for the photo. Or I always like the in-laws. My brother-in-law asked me how my little side gig is going, while I'm trying to build my business. Like, ouch, right? That really hurts. And these prompts, they come from the senses, of course.
Right.
So visual, hearing, what do you physically feel? So if I'm thinking about hair loss, I might touch the back of my head and feel my scalp and not hair. Like, this is just really twisting the knife stuff. Versus if we only said the phrase, I was losing my hair,
Right.
not nearly as emotionally resonant and powerful. So it's only through working those things that we could get to the declaration of, I had to face the hard facts that I was losing my hair, and deep inside, that caused me to feel old, ugly, unlovable, insecure, all of these words. But without those bridges in between, the copy falls much more flat. And so we added this to a split test for a hair loss product, and we saw a 25% lift. We made a few other changes too that I'm also going to share, and here's my other little bonus tip that I should share before I do this. When you're doing research and you're looking at great promos, either you could do this on forums, you could do this on classic control sales letters, you can do this on your competitor sales letters. I love to do like Control F and look for like, okay, what are all the feelings that they talk about? And when I'm like critiquing copy, I'll find, usually there's not enough of the word feel. This one has a lot because I chiefed it, but I'll show you examples where there's not a lot. Or I'll look for other words like desperate or pain or agony or something related to that niche in particular. So right now I'm looking for scalp. It's just a little example of this hair stuff in real time. Every time I looked at my brush after using it, it was full of lost hair I was afraid would never go back. My shower floor would look like a graveyard of lost dead hair every time I washed it. And the hair on my head kept getting more and more drab, lifeless, and brittle. And I could even feel the bare skin on my scalp when I would touch my head in certain places, which was horrifying. Maybe you can relate. And then we start talking about things that didn't get worse. And here, it's only after that stuff where we could really come to I was starting to lose hope, because that builds the bridge to get us there.
Right. So I have a question. Well, okay. So you would do this for primarily you want to make sure you're dimensionalizing the problem and the solution, right?
Yeah.
Are there any other things that relate to that you might also want to dimensionalize, like as it relates to this, or are you going to get to that?
You know what's coming here.
Oh, no, I don't know. Okay. So, and then I had another question though, and there's also like the impact, right? Like, and maybe this isn't dimensionalizing, like, but like the impact of that deeper feeling, right? Like I just remember, so one of my mentors, right, Mark Ford, Michael Masterson, I remember a presentation that he gave in copywriting, and he was like yelling at someone, and he was like, and he was yelling at the guy, and he was saying, like, the copywriter, and he's like, if you think that just like someone is buying hearing aids because they want to hear better, like, you're a moron. Like, when you lose your hearing, and I don't even remember what else he had to say. I wish I did. But it's like, when you lose your hearing, like, you're now distant from other people. You're no longer part of the conversation. You're actually don't even like, you're starting to isolate. There's so many other things that the person is actually going through that like you can tap into. And so like, this is like when you do it, like, this is your starting point, or you feel like this is enough, or do you go there too? And I'm just curious, like, with that kind of stuff.
Like I go everywhere.
Right.
And this is one of the things I really drill in my teaching, is to separate your generative phase of writing from your revision and editing phase of writing.
Right.
Because so long as you know that you're in the generation container, now you can be no holds barred, and you're not assessing every single line as soon as you write it of, okay, is this perfect yet? So when you're in that beautiful, fun space of I'm going to go everywhere, yeah, what is the greater implication of feeling poor confidence,
Right.
feeling old, your mother-in-law is ragging on you about your damn hats all the time. Okay,
Right.
so maybe now you avoid family events. You pick fights with your husband because your mother-in-law is so annoying.
Mm,
So there's so many further problems, and this could just go on and on and on.
got it.
And that's all in this pain agitation frame. This is why I say like 4x3, because that's one. And we
Right.
also want to do
Okay.
dimensionalization like this in the positive realm as
Right.
well. Everything that you see, hear, feel, and then deep down feel once, and the implications of those deep down feelings once the solution is yours and once you have the desired outcome. So perhaps we go from your brother-in-law at Thanksgiving saying, how's that little side hustle going?
Mhm.
To you know, driving your new sports car, right, by
Right.
Christmas time. And your brother's like, your brother-in-law's like, how did you do that? So now we
Mhm.
get like that full, we also get the
Right.
satisfaction of the through line being completed, you know.
Got it.
And now your wife is so happy. My wife is so happy because I attend all family functions with a smile on my face.
Right.
So it's so much more than just that one little hair pill or that one business tweak, right?
Mhm.
And the third realm in which it's really important to do this are your explanations or your data or your scientific studies or your proof elements. Don't just show me proof. Tell me how to interpret that proof. Tell me quite literally what to think. So I have an example of what I do on this very busy skin win page for Eden Beauty that works quite well. I'm not just showing you before and after. I am telling you what to look at. Look at how
Mhm.
those wrinkles got softer. Look at how there are less dark spots. Look at how her neck is tighter, so on and so forth. And another realm where you always want to do this, I know my trigger words for it, is when you cite a study. So here I cite a study from the National Institute of Health, and I do like slightly science talk, eating dead skin cells, talk about sebum, which is a more technical term. So anytime you are pulling in proof or data like this, I like to use trigger phrases
Mhm.
like in other words, or what that means. And this is my framework for dimensionalizing the proof. Okay, tell me what
Got
to
it.
think. It's meant to help your face look younger. Yes, your skin's gonna look tighter, so on and so forth. Wrinkles will go away. This is a clever way to translate science talk or whatever it may be to serve whatever purpose you like. Because as a copywriter, you can spin it
Yeah.
into quite literally whatever you want. And so that is my sneaky third way, I would say, to work dimensionalization that a lot of people might miss.
Got it.
Are there any other questions or thoughts on that before I move into my metaphor matrix?
Yeah. I mean, I like that to me reminds me of just, um, you know, when I'm doing a webinar or live stream or whatever, if I have to like kind of convert people on it, I am often thinking about like, you know, so that, so that you, right? Like, whatever I'm claiming, I then want to have like, so that you can, or whatever, right? Like that as a transition to what I just said to now how their life is going to be different, right? Like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So that makes sense to me. Just tell me how to interpret. Yeah, I mean, what you're really doing, I think, on a lot of this is not this last part, but definitely on the problem and on the solution. It's showing, not telling, right?
Mhm.
Like, which a lot of people don't know how to do. So this makes it a lot easier, which I dig. So cool.
Yes, exactly. And it's easy to think about this stuff, and it's easy
Mhm.
for me to say this stuff and to teach this stuff. But of course,
But
you
it's
get the
also easy
biggest
to do it.
benefit when you really just sit
Yeah.
down and write this stuff. And I make this part of my practice. Like, this is part of how I write. Like, I tell myself, all right, what's the visible image, visual image? What is the jerk character? And, in most people's story who have this problem, what do they say? What do I physically feel? So on and so forth. So you just quite literally designate 15 minutes of your time to do this as an exercise.
But this
And
is done after you've written the first draft, right? Or no?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I'm not so rigid in my process.
Right.
So if I'm in the zone and I'm going and I'm writing a draft, then I'm writing a draft. But it's very useful if I'm a little bit stuck, or when I am reviewing that first draft, I can realize, oh, okay, this needs more dimensionalization right here. Oh, I'm telling and not showing here.
Got it.
Here is the way I can transform that into showing. Your metaphor matrix. Okay, don't hire me for graphic design.
Yeah, me neither.
So metaphors, in addition to being hypnotic because they quickly bypass the logical faculties of your brain. Like if I say like flipping a light switch, you immediately visualize flipping a light switch. There's no like cognitive effort that you have to do with a phrase like flicking a light switch. In addition to having that effect on the reader, they also subcommunicate proof, because it's like if X is true, then Y is true. So if one domino falls and knocks down all the other dominoes, and my golf swing, if I make this one tweak to my golf swing, it'll be like hitting the first domino. Oh, okay. And now all of the other issues with my golf swing are going to go away. This is how you might use that metaphor in an effective way. But how do we come up with useful metaphors? They're so mysterious. Not necessarily. So on one side of your sheet of paper or in one column of your Word document, I give you the prompts. Object, animal, person, common process. I encourage you to get incredibly random. Sometimes I will look at objects around my desk and I'll be like, okay, cup, orchid, monitor, power bank, bag.
Right.
Try to come up with 4 or 5 of each. Animal, you can go completely random, or if there are animals that are somehow related to your niche, I might think of hairy animals if I'm talking about hair, or bald animals if I'm talking about hair loss. Yeah. Person, usually that's some sort of icon or sports figure. It would be like how Michael Jordan shoots the basketball, something like this. So people that everybody would know. Or a common process, flipping a light switch, filling a glass of water, walking down the street. You can be totally random. Do not force these to fit just yet, because this is part of the magic, because they're going to fit afterwards. Now on the other side of your matrix, you will write your product, which everybody knows what their product is. You will write your mechanism, which is either the root cause of the problem, your problem mechanism, or your root factor of the solution, like the thing that makes your solution work and unlike nothing else. You will list your mechanisms there, and then you will also list the results that your product brings. So growing more hair, fixing your golf swing, whatever that may be. And then you will quite simply begin to pair these things together and see how they might work to create a metaphor for you. So let me show you my example that I have for Skinland. And as part of your generative, let me add this note too. As part of your generative exercise, you will work in this metaphor. So now my task is, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes writing about this metaphor, and I'm really going to live in it every single step of the process. So if I were to say that becoming more abundant is like flipping the light switch, I'm thinking about every moment of flipping the light switch and how more abundance comes into my life, like light filling the room. So believing in possibility might be the same as me extending my hand. And when I first take my finger out, when I first touch the switch, okay, what's that? That'll be like the first abundant gift that comes into my life once I've adapted this new technology of abundance or whatever it may be. So this is what I mean by living in the metaphor. I wanted to explain that a little bit. Think about it like this. You walk into a well-lit room and see 2 fish tanks. Stick with me even if this seems weird at first. So I try to address that little resistance of, what the fuck is she talking about? And now I'm really living in it. I'm really describing everything. One tank is filled with cloudy, murky, ugly water. The plants are shriveled and don't look healthy. The few fish inside are slowly moving and look like they may soon meet their end. In the other tank, the water is bright and clear. The plants are colorful, vibrant, and beautiful to look at, and the fish dart from side to side, exploring their world happily. On the bottom of this beautiful tank, you see smaller sea creatures crawling on the floor. These creatures eat all of the toxins, gunk, and junk that would otherwise accumulate in the water, resulting in a beautiful, healthy fish tank that is thriving. The first ugly tank was missing these little helpful organisms, which is why the two tanks looked so different. If you're comparing your face to these tanks, which one would you rather have? So this is an important part. Why?
Right.
Because I'm bringing it all the way home. I don't leave the reader to assume
Right.
that my product is going to get them the beautiful tank. I'm very clearly saying it, and then I go on, in a little more copy to say it a few more times. So there's an example of really living in the metaphor. And I hope that demystifies it a bit for people, because really magical stuff happens when you plug in random things in there.
I guess I'm not as clear as you might think I am, I guess, as like how, like, what's the process? Like after you have all these listed, right? Like you have a bunch of objects, you have a bunch of animals, you have a bunch of people and common process. Are you just picking one on the left? Are you trying to combine left and right? Like what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would find between the left and the right which two might work the best together, and then start connecting them. So if I were to compare, like say for animal, I wrote a bear that hibernates. Okay. So I would put
Or
bear.
lions, like I think sleep like 20 hours a day,
Yeah,
and
they
they
do.
just,
That's right. They do. They're so lazy. So yeah, I like lions. So let's do, if I were to do lion with the result of sleeping a long time, I would say, and you might even be able to find a mechanism out of this process too, because you
Right.
might be like, why is it that lions sleep
Lions
for a
sleep
really
so
long
much.
time?
Yeah.
And you could research that, and you might see, oh, they produce more of this hormone. And if my result is people sleeping for an extended amount of time, then I might see how my product could activate the body to produce more of this hormone that lions have. And so even through this process, I've got like a mechanism, a unique mechanism.
Right.
But I would tell the story of how the lion that sleeps for 22 hours feels groggy because his body's now producing more of this hormone, so on and so forth. And then as you lay your head on the pillow with the power and calmness of a lion, feel so great knowing that you're getting this result. Is that a helpful example?
Yeah. Why lions don't get insomnia.
Yeah, why
And how to cure yours,
lions have
right?
insomnia? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, very cool. Got it. I once went like on a deep dive, kind of like what, like I shared my notes with you on transformation stuff. I once went on a very deep dive also on persuasion, and I don't remember what it was, but like at some point it occurred to me that like metaphors are really like kind of the most powerful thing when it comes to persuasion. And whenever I come up with something like that, right, like some kind of assertion that now I'm not really sure if it's true or not, right, like I will ask people who are much more knowledgeable than me. Sometime around then I did something with Cialdini. I don't remember what. I've done a bunch of things with him over the years. And I said, Bob, let me ask you a question. I've been studying a lot more persuasion recently and stuff. And I was like, it seems to me that metaphors are the most efficient and effective way of persuasion. What do you think? And he thought about it for a minute. He's like, I would agree. He's like, that is the most powerful and most efficient. Definitely, he said, definitely most efficient, possibly the most powerful, but definitely most efficient, right? Because yeah, the ability to relate what you are trying to get people to see as something to something they already know, like removes a lot of the need to have to explain a lot of things in addition to getting that buy-in, like, oh, this is just like that, right? Like, so
Yeah,
totally cool.
You might say it's like taking a chainsaw to a twig.
Right.
See, chainsaw be a totally random thing. I'd like,
Right.
or even like chopping down a tree. I'm just so confident in anybody and everybody who watches this, the ability they would have to create really cool metaphors, just by allowing themselves to get a little bit random and detached from, I have to get it perfect this very first time. Leaves the space for you to have more fun and create very cool stuff, and then effective stuff that sells. So that moves into naming conventions, as I mentioned earlier, because when you name something, it is uniquely yours and they cannot get it anywhere else. So instead of your 3-step system, I find myself very frequently asking, what comes in 3s? What comes in 4s? So there are 4 suits in a deck of cards. So I might call something that is in 4 parts my full deck method to blah, blah, blah. Of course, when I think of 3s, I think triangles, I think geometry, other sort of shapes are always useful. When you package your process, especially if you're selling information and you either put it into this number of steps, what is one word for each step? Are we close to an acronym? Is step 1 to create? Is
Right.
step 2 to edit? And is step 3 to deliver? Like a 3-step process for writing a letter or something like this. Okay, CED, like that's an acronym, that's okay. But could we perhaps turn that into an acronym that's an actual word? Like, could it be the CAD, which is like a sort of design, or, and then I would just start literally looking, what are cool 3-letter words that start with C or something like this. And then, so that's actually called a backronym. And so when we come up, which I love this term. So when we come up with the word first and we're like, okay, how can I retrofit an acronym to this?
Okay.
So
I'm not still sure. What is a backronym? I'm not sure. Like, what is a backronym?
So instead of
the last letters, or is it something else?
It's coming up with the acronym first. So let's say you have like the CED method and you're like, let's switch that out so that I could get an actual word. That would be a backronym because you're sort of doing it backwards.
Got it.
So maybe if we had the word in mind, like for you, like for Steal our winners, and you were to come up with the Steal method to getting all these brilliant presenters on your platform.
Got it.
Okay, what would S be? What would T be? So on and so forth. That would be an example of a backronym because we have the word first.
Right.
So, and I think that's just a useful framework to develop these potentially cool names for products, courses, mechanisms, so on and so forth. And I'll show you a few examples of these two to make them a bit more clear. I'll just run through other sources of inspiration that I use. So I think about different iconographies all the time. So love going back to history, different mythologies. So now I'm thinking Greek gods and goddesses. What's the Zeus method? Maybe I come up with the Zeus method for something, and then I make that an acronym, ZEUS, and that would be a backronym for something else. That would be if somebody has the Zeus method for something, I'll buy it. Okay, I want to know what the hell that is. It's super cool. I think about
story. See it advertised.
Yeah, somebody can have that. I think about storytelling archetypes too. So, who is the villain? Who is the hero? Who is the catalyst, or what is the catalyst to some transformation happening? These are just all places that I look to come up with names for stuff.
So can you give an example of a storytelling archetype that you might use as a product name or something?
Well, I can show you, I can show you a Greek goddess.
Okay.
So we thought of the Aphrodite root, which we totally came up with. This was not in existence before. It is not known. It is not a known type of root in your hair. But how did I get here? Because the copywriter I was chiefing on this thought of an anchor as a metaphor. So just like an anchor digs into the ocean floor and the boat is unable to move, this product will help your hair perform more like an anchor. So it's really grounded in your head and it doesn't fall out. Anchor, though, feels a little bit masculine, So I wanted to come up with a way to get it more feminine. And so I started thinking of nymphs and the ocean. I started thinking about all these things related to the sea because of anchor. So this was the beginning, and it's still very useful. But how do we amplify this even more and get it even cooler, right? So I started thinking nymphs, ocean goddesses, and I had to look this up. I'm like, who are the different ocean goddesses? And it's in this copy somewhere when we explain why it's called Aphrodite root. I think we mentioned her a few times. But what you might not know, there it is is that in addition to being the goddess of love, Aphrodite was also the Greek goddess of ships and sea travel. And that's why lots of hair experts call this the Aphrodite root, because once we activate it, your hair is in there like an anchor. In fact, in another round of revision, I would explicitly say that, which let me offer this too. Bonus side tip: review your own work and review your copywriter's work on video in a Loom, even if it's literally just you yourself reviewing your own work, because when you speak these things out loud, you're forced to be way more clear. So I have all my cubs review their own work in Loom, so I don't have to do it. And so they can also channel, the greats. That's an embodiment principle too. So it's like, if Rich was to look at this piece, what would he say? Okay, I'm going to embody Rich and review this, and it's going to make the work so much more powerful. So business owners could do that on their own stuff all the time. So that was an example of a little bit of Greek mythology coming into play. And I'll just run off some other categories. And I use these as generative prompts. So I'll literally just start writing, okay, Aphrodite, Athena, thinking of plants, I'm thinking of stars, I'm thinking of the moon, I'm thinking of different galaxies, constellations. And then if I'm thinking of masculine stuff, I would think of like Zeus and Poseidon and the male gods and strength, and masculine like games and machinery. And, so just these different categories to get me moving, to get me going until I hit something. And I put cool/powerful words, which is quite literally a prompt I would give you to just make a list of cool, powerful words. And I feel like very few in the game are better at this than the guys at Performance Golf Zone. And I would be remiss not to include them because they're so brilliant at naming their mechanisms. Hidden, power plane. So hidden and power are two cool words. And once you get these two cool words together, the name just writes itself, right? The hidden power plane or reverse slice sequence. So both hidden and reverse are these almost counterintuitive little words. Like, what's hidden? Oh, I'm reversing something. Why would I be reversing something? That's not language I'm used to hearing. So that would fall into my cool word category to inspire you to get your naming conventions to the next level. One other example that I have, and this doubled conversion rates once we added this to this letter, is the crescent effect. So the mechanism of this skincare product desperately needed a name, I felt. And so I thought of space. I love space. I'm a big stargazing nerd, So I thought of space, and I thought of the moon, and I thought of what's feminine, what sounds good, crescent effect, it almost rhymes. And so just leaving myself open to it, I'm like, the name will come. And then it just fell upon me, the crescent effect. And once you have the name, you can always work backwards from there to tie it into how it works for your product. So it creates this effervescent glow, just like you looking at a crescent moon from Earth. I think the from Earth is important there because if you're thinking about the moon, it does have bumps on it. And so you want to counter that infection when you're talking about the skin. So that's important. But I think it's just so pretty that it worked. We saw 100% lift after we added that, which was really cool.
That's awesome.
And again, because they also can't get it anywhere else. So if I'm just selling you a cream that fades your wrinkles, I can open up Amazon and get that, but I can only get the crescent effect here. So that's why your naming conventions are super duper powerful. Any thoughts or questions on that?
How much time will you put into something like this? Like in general, like for the naming? I would imagine that more often than not, you come up with an idea that is marginally okay, or maybe halfway decent, like relatively soon. And then the question is how much more to push it, right? Like, do you try to get a name that's like absolutely excellent and that's what you're really looking for? Is it like just, what does the process kind of look like with this?
Something like the big idea would be, which I define as the premise of a whole piece. If I was to quickly tell you what a movie was about, you know, in one sentence.
Right.
That's kind of what I consider how I package the big idea. Something
Mhm.
like that. I give myself as much time as humanly possible, if it doesn't come to me immediately, because it's so important, right?
Mhm.
Something like a name, if I'm looking to beat a control and other stuff, the idea, the promise, the offer is all solid,
Mhm.
I would look to adding a name. That
Mhm.
because I feel like that is one of those small hinges that could open a big door.
Got it.
And so in that situation, you know, I'd allow myself
Sometime.
some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometime. Teaching copy is can be tricky because it's more art than physics, right?
Mhm.
And so this is an example of how I'm trying to add a little bit of physics to art.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
You're creating like thinking tools.
Thinking
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so once you have thinking tools like this, I'll tell you, it dramatically speeds up the process.
Mhm.
I added a beautiful mechanism named to a new offer that's coming online in minutes because it was 3 steps. And even
Mhm.
though I've Googled what comes in threes literally hundreds of times, I did it
Right.
one more time and I saw clover. And for what we were doing, there's actually like similar compounds that are in clovers that are in the product. It just ended up being a
Oh,
fantastic fit.
perfect.
I know. And that came up, like I was able to do that in a minute because I understand this process that I have for doing it. So it's my hope that when other people lean into this stuff, it could be quick for them as well. Move on. This is also incredibly quick. My hypnotic loop openings to keep prospects glued to your page for even longer. So as I mentioned in the introduction,
Right.
you know your standard opening loop. I'll come back to this in a moment, but first,
Right.
so let's add a little future pacing and hypnotism to that with, here are a few examples. As you read all of the details here, you'll understand all the reasons why this works.
Right.
Um, so there's the embedded commands that they're going to read everything, but not only that, they will end up
Yeah.
knowing that this works,
Right.
even if, who knows, maybe the science isn't super sound and maybe we don't have a gazillion proof elements yet, but at least I can try my best to see the
Right.
little command that they will understand that this works.
Mhm.
Similarly, in a video, this is like part of my process, it's a requirement. Some sort of line about those who watch to the end
Mhm.
discover. So, and some big juicy benefit, something they really want to know. You find, and that could really happen anytime. I like doing it in the beginning, of course,
Mhm.
but you want to repeat that a few times throughout the video. And if you
Got it.
see that at the 5.5 minute mark, 30% of your viewers are leaving, okay, here is my quickest offering to you. Add that line in there. You do a very simple transition, and no matter what, no matter what you're
Mhm.
saying, and no matter what, those who watch to the end of this video discover blank, and people will hang on. So those are my hypnotic loop openings. Please use them because I just don't see them enough of the time.
Yeah. So I have some like a couple like here. I don't know from where I got these.
Mm.
Might have gotten it from Michael Cage because it's like it's related to a teleseminar. But here are opening, closing, and profiting from loops, right?
Mm.
And in a moment, I'm going to reveal how opening loops will increase attention and impact you with teleseminars. One of the 7 steps you must do to succeed on teleseminars, right? And now, like, what are the other 6, right? When I finally discovered how to make really big money with teleseminars, I was amazed at how many so-called experts had overlooked this secret. But before I tell you what it is, um, all 3 of the above statements are examples of opening loops in the minds of your callers. They tease the caller with juicy pieces of information that they really want, but then delay satisfying it. The
Mhm.
sense it creates in your callers is one of anticipation. When you come back and close the loop later in the call or after a brief story, their anticipation gets satisfied and the point goes deeper. Opening loops will allow you to give useful content and still turn it into as much of a sales tease as if you were giving nothing but blind bullets. I actually mentioned it earlier in this secret. What is the effect of saying there are 7 things you must know about your customers before you launch? And an advertising campaign. 7 things. One of the least understood is, in your caller's mind, they say, yeah, that one makes sense, but what are the others? I need to have the others. How do you get the others? They buy your offer. On the last note about not closing your loops, when you do this on a teleseminar, you will get questions emailed to you asking for the rest of the details. So it is best to have stock answers or partial answers prepared in advance to make it easy for your staff to lead the questioner to buying your stuff. I just thought that was cool. So for some reason it was in my Evernote. I was looking for something else, but yeah, I mean, open loops, nested loops, very powerful. And although what I would say is that like what I did a Steal Our Winners with this gentleman, Walter Birch, about a year ago, who's more of an insider, not really a guru, like more behind the scenes, but very successful. And what he found in YouTube ads was that better to immediately start with value and then tease, as opposed to just tease, right? Taste versus tease is what he called it. And so it's like, first give value, then open a loop. And because you're more believable, right? Like right up front, because you're a total interruption at that moment, right? But totally, it's just very powerful, right?
Do you have an example of a good taste off the top of your head?
Yeah. So, you know, I can actually give you the example that the best one, like one of well, I can give you a shitty one, but I can also give you a really good one. The shitty one, right, would be like a tease would be, in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 ways to immediately increase the conversion rates of any sales letter, right? As opposed to the first way to increase like the conversion rate on a sales letter is take any verb in your headline and make it plural. What that does is take possession of it takes the activity from the prospect to the actual device. So, you know, boost your income versus boost your income, right? But that one is the least of the 3 secrets that I want to share with you today in this video, right? Like, and so like that was probably too long. Let me find the one though that I really like. I can find it really pretty quickly because I know where it is. All right, so we're looking at video scripts for different ads, right? This first one got over 10 million views. Everything else doesn't break like more than 100,000, more or less, right? So let's look at the losers. Did you know there's one simple technique any woman can master in seconds that makes a man fall utterly, absolutely in love with just one kiss? Total tease, right? Why don't you kiss me like you used to? Cassidy begged her boyfriend, Brian, as he walked out the door. They'd been together for almost a year, right? I hate to say it, but if you're like 94% of women, you're kissing men absolutely wrong, right? Or a kiss is a conversation. I told Cassidy on the phone. She had called up crying, blah, 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 right? Here's the winner. There's one simple kissing technique any woman can use to make a man beg to be her boyfriend. It's really very simple. First, you look him right in the eye. Like, so if that, you know, the idea is that the YouTube algorithm is really good at finding the right people, but just because it's the right person doesn't mean it's the right time, right? And one of the easiest ways to get someone in the mood is by giving them a taste. Like if you want someone to, like you just had the best ice cream in the world, right? You want your friend to have some, it's a lot easier to get them to eat it if you can put a taste in their mouth, right? So that's kind of the idea there. Anyway, so but like, it's still very necessary to open a loop. It's like, but first get a little bit of like trust and buy-in, then open the loop, right? Because you still want them engaged and anticipating, but all anticipation, people have been disappointed too many times, possibly, right? So then like you got to prove it.
And often on YouTube, people are looking for some sort of information.
Well, this would be an ad that's an interruption of you clicking on something that you want to see, and this comes up. So you really do have to, you only got a few seconds to get them in the mood. So anyway, but I interrupted. Take back over the screen.
So interiority, this is where we get into the spokesperson's or the speaker of a letter's deep feelings. This, you want to write a diary entry. This is how we get there. This is how we get to that deep level of interiority. So this is a specific prompt and exercise that I will do. Okay, I'm just going to write a diary entry as if I, was Fabian Patina in this example, or I'm the lady whose grandson said, your hair looks like grandpa's. I'm writing a journal entry as her. And this is where I say that journal entry is much better than journalism. And I know that Stefan has shown the split test win before, but I don't know if he talked about interiority, which I think is a really important reason why it won. So I will very quickly, I think I have both versions, just show you this through the lens of some interiority, and you'll see how the writing on the original, even though it's in the first person, feels really quite journalistic. 30 years ago, I was the undisputed heavyweight champion, youngest man to unify all 3 heavyweight titles. These are facts. These are what a journalist would say about Mike. Like, we're not getting much of his feelings.
Right.
Versus, but inside I've always felt like a fat, scared little kid. Me, a fat piece of shit. At first I didn't care. So this is very high level of interiority here. And many writers might say they're not like, but how do I tell stories? I don't know how to like make up a story. And I believe, and I have seen it over and over again, like this shift of, well, don't write a story for me then, just write a diary entry. And then we get a lot of pain, agitation, a lot of high emotional resonance, and then a lot of joy when the transformation occurs. And, Mike is so excited. He woke the fuck up. He's going to shake you out of your boots and so on and so forth, because we're getting that level of interiority. So I really wanted to offer that to everyone as well. And let me go back into slideshow mode to really force people to implement this so that it is not just artsy theory, but stuff that really increases your conversion rates. So how do you hella leverage this information that I've given you? Create the time and space specifically to do these things. Don't just think about them as you are attempting to write a full-on sales letter. Do this whenever the inspiration strikes. So these are separate implementation pieces in addition to writing a new sales letter or writing a new lead. Or if you're going to tell yourself, I'm going to write a new lead and I'm going to be high interiority for this. And I'm going to do high dimensionalization for this, or separately. Okay, I am going to come up with a name for this mechanism because it doesn't have one. I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes and write cool words. I'm going to write potential acronyms or backronyms. I am going to list out animals that are somehow related to this, or games that are somehow related to this, like dominoes, like a deck of cards, so on and so forth. Okay, now I have stuff to come up with a name for this mechanism that didn't originally have one. So as another example, follow my dimensionalization prompts. What do you see? What do you hear? What does the jerk say? What do you physically feel with your hands? And how do you feel deep inside? And what are the implications of the feeling deep inside? Okay, do that again. Okay, do it again. And now make sure we do that for all of the positive stuff that comes at the end of the rainbow, and do it for your explanations of things, do it for your scientific proof, do it for your before and after images. Tell me what to think. Give yourself 10 minutes to fill out the metaphor matrix. And I'm glad that you pulled it out of me to really come up with an example of it in real time. So here are the lions. They sleep so well, you're gonna sleep like a lion. But take the time, like what happens when the lion stretches before bed? Just really live in it with me, A to Z. And brainstorm your iconographies, physics terms, all of that. I mentioned that before for your naming conventions, and look for your fall off points. You can do this through scroll depth. So you can see, oh, it's right there. People click off the page. I'm gonna add a hypnotic open loop. Or in your Wistia, oh, it's 3 minutes and 50 seconds. I'm gonna add a hypnotic open loop and increase consumption by 69% with 2 words.
what was it that you were like? I think it was the for fall off points. You were also talking about like those. I think of those words as like bucket brigade words.
Bucket brigade words.
Yeah, let me just see, like, because if I have it, so I wrote these two reports like a long, long time ago, like in 2007, right? The attention age doctrine 1 and 2, and it was all about, how attention was going to become the scarcest commodity online and what that was going to look like and what was the impact of that stuff. And so what I used to do before I wrote a report, right? A lot of times, like, I was already working on the report. I mean, before I released the report, I would do what, like, I would seed the blog a lot. This was back, 2007, 2006, 2007, 2008. And what I would do is, hold on, I just want to see if this is it. Yep, cool. What I would do is I would like be posting really cool stuff on the blog that like for free, that, no opt-in, no anything. Primarily because, like if I did that several days, like we would start seeing like the amount of traffic build and build as other people are telling people, oh, Chevron's giving this away or whatever, right? Like people would link to it and stuff. And then what that would allow me to do is, I would be building up to the release of the report by getting more and more traffic, more and more traffic. And as the traffic is building and building and building just on its own, before we even make an announcement that something's coming out, right? Then, I would drop the report on the day that I got the most amount of, like, as we had built up the traffic, right? So anyway, so one of the days on the blog, I wasn't just like randomly. One of the days on this blog, I created this, what's called a bucket brigade, which I think I learned that phrase from John Carlton. And let me just see what I have it here. And so I created this 7-page document called Phrases That Keep Attention, because that's what they're designed to do. Yeah, here. Cool. So let me pull it up. I'll share it for a second. Cool. And if it's in alignment with what you're talking about, then we can just include it as a resource here. Let's see. So a word of caution, right? Like, if that's not enough. I mean, these are like, I used to use these all the time. I mean, they are phrases that will capture the eyes because like they imply that something important is about to come. Right? Like, and we don't stop there. And what if we could take, and what's worse? But not, I would say not all of these are, right? But a lot like are what you're talking about, but quite a few of them are like, but here's the thing, right? Yes. Like, well, what is the thing? Like, or consider this fact.
Yes.
Right. Consider this, right? But I have an even better idea. What's that idea? Right. Like, but I'm jumping way ahead. Right. Like, so I'll include this anyway, because we don't do anything with it. But but it's like the point was, like I used to look at this and it would also just give me ideas of what to write.
Yes, exactly. These are really useful, like transitional phrases too, that create space for you to say more great stuff.
And I was told by someone that I use, and it's just natural, but I guess it's effective. Like I use a lot of words in my writing and sometimes when I'm speaking, like that are very, they infer that there's logic when there really isn't. Like, no. That means, or like those kinds of phrases. I can't really think of them because I don't do them intentionally. But anyway, put yours back on so that we can look at it again.
Okay, that was my final slide.
Yeah, I know, but I want to just like
to share one more
underscore some of those points.
Okay.
I would think though that like most of those are like, would you say, I know we touched on it in the beginning, but that like probably best to write the first draft as quickly and without thinking that much, and then like go in behind it and do all these things.
Yes, absolutely.
I heard an interesting thing and I tried it the other day. I didn't go very deep with it, but it was effective. Like for someone who does do a lot of like, tries to write their final draft as their first draft, right? Which is very slow.
Mhm.
The recommendation was to write on your phone. Like, and believe it or not, I could actually write pretty fast on my phone, and it totally does get, you're not reviewing what you wrote, like,
Right.
because you're just so accustomed to, and it keeps you like so focused. It actually works. I was totally like blown away that, like,
Wow.
you know,
Is that
um,
like something long or maybe for like an email or?
like, well, getting a couple pages down, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I've done, and I don't know, like, and maybe you just have like some, well, let me tell you what I do, but like, if you have any tips that you didn't include here, but like, are like how to get that first draft done fast,
Mhm.
like, because I bet you a lot of people struggle with that. For me, generally when I'm working on these kind of issues or trying to get a better idea, like a better concept or like a better mechanism, I fill my head with so much knowledge and it gets very frustrating. And then I become a little bit of an asshole to be around because I'm very like, I don't know, like, I've like been filling my head, and I just like, I'm stuck. Right. Um, it is shocking that, and I'm saying this, maybe it's helpful for people. I guess everyone's an adult here. I will get stoned. And a lot of times getting stoned when I'm not used to getting stoned on a daily basis, and I've been like feeding my head, a lot of times it's just like being, I guess, like being too uptight or being too like whatever. And so it only works if I've done all the pre-work. Like, it's, I wish anytime I smoked, I just came up with good ideas. But when I've done a lot of work and I'm not getting anywhere, that often opens up like, kind of the creative side, kind of like write drunk, edit sober, right? Like
Yes.
that same kind of thing. But do you have any tricks, especially since you've coached so many copywriters, like on when people are like either avoiding the task or they're just not good at getting that first draft done fast?
Yes. So quite similarly, I digest a lot of information, I do a bunch of research, and then I step away.
Mm-hmm.
And magic, I mean, so it's, you hear so many people say this, that
Right.
it's in that moment that they step away or they go for a walk or they take a shower, or they have a bath, and then the idea comes. And so making that a conscious part of the process, versus stepping away out of frustration. Oh, this is my time to step away, and there's a good chance some magic's going to happen. Even if it doesn't, though, I will still write tomorrow at X time. So it's a process oriented goal. You're not tied to the outcome of creating a magnificent piece, but you're a professional, right? So
Mhm.
as a professional, you have to show up and do the task that you're professionally called to do. And that task will be for you tomorrow, or for the writer who needs to get over this hump and start writing. Your task is to sit down at the computer and begin to write. Start with the diary entry. I find that a really easy, low pressure point to begin. And you're a copywriter. If for most copywriters at a certain level, you'll know to begin weaving in some teasing, But if you're starting with the prompt of the diary entry, I woke up today and I was so upset to see hair on my pillow.
Right.
My damn mother-in-law's coming over. I start there, But the reason I'm like, you just can't help it. But the reason I'm
Right.
telling you all of this is because I discovered this amazing thing, and so on and so forth. And you'll just begin writing a sales letter. An incredibly helpful trick too, to maintain focus and actually like complete a draft in one
Mhm.
sitting. Maybe other people have mentioned this to you before. I'm curious if you've tried it too. Playing one instrumental song, only one song on repeat, over and over and over again. And I like Baroque music for that, like a Bach, whatever,
Mhm.
Yo-Yo Ma piece, not a playlist, not a
Right.
Bach playlist, a single Bach song. And they've said, I've read that that's particularly helpful for people with ADHD because it creates the effect of like white noise to kind of like
Mhm.
soothe the chatter in your brain. But it is different from white noise because it hits like different brain waves, like theta brain waves,
Mhm.
which enable you to maintain focus. plus the calm of the white noise effect. That has definitely gotten me like into writing trance where like an hour will pass and I, can write a lot of words in an hour.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've heard that. No one's ever talked about it on here. When I used to do a lot of writing, I would listen to a specific type of techno, and that would be blasting, like really loud. But there's no words, right? So it's
yeah.
just, and yeah, and I would, let's see, I'd get all juiced up on some kind of stimulant, whether it's coffee, nicotine, like my gum, or something stronger, like, Adderall or something like that. There's a lot of science behind like wearing a hoodie, believe it or not. There's logic behind like, when you see like it's starting to create tunnel vision, right? Like, so there's actually some real benefits to it. There's science research on that. And for me, nothing moves me more than a deadline. And that deadline being attached to some personal humiliation if I'm not done. Like, it's not a real deadline, not a fictitious one, because there's no humiliation involved in a fictitious one. But nothing kind of gets me more focused than that.
Well, what's a personal humiliation that?
Well, like, I know this much more with like presentations than with sales letters, since I don't write that many sales letters. Last one I wrote was a long time ago. But with presentations, like I have to give it at this specific time. And a lot of times I will finish it like 10 minutes before that specific time. But yeah, like that, it no matter when I start, I always finish right before it needs to be done. So, so this has been awesome.
Yeah.
And I, a lot of these things, like I do something similar, but like, and I've done it haphazardly. I can see how all of these work, and it's great that you not only, told people what to do, but how to do it. So I dig it. What would you say, like, can you go back to that? I think in the original slide, like you talked about the difference, right? Like, where were those stats? Like about, like, yeah, 69% more. Like overall, any specific time where you can think of where you've kind of had to do all of these for like a project, like as far as where like you were there to beat what they already had?
Yeah. So we
And
really
what was the result of that? That's what I'm curious.
here was their original control, which has a bit of a punch in the gut headline
Right.
here. The herd word. Grandma has
That's
the
not a
same.
bad headline. I mean,
No, it's not a bad headline. They're struggling to get this to consistently convert at over 1% on mostly affiliate traffic. And I want to make a note about like my approach to split testing here, because I'm sure folks will ask. So yes, I changed many things at once because I'm looking for a really big lift.
Right.
If this was getting thousands and thousands of views every day and I was risking breaking it by changing too many things at once, then, and it was already performing quite well, then yeah, sure, I would only change one thing and have the isolated variable. But if we're in a situation where there's going to be a big traffic push, but we know that it's coming and the conversion rate is really not there, and so I have the opportunity to take quite a big swing and see a big lift, then I'm going to make all the changes, and we can always work backwards from there. So that is my approach to doing a split test like that.
Got it. And what was the, like, how much did you
increase response? Without knowing it. Like, let me just say it like that.
What's that?
Sometimes you might end up polishing a turd,
right.
It's a turd. So like, let's get it to
But what was the overall lift?
25%.
25%.
25%. And we still have more to do for sure. But yeah, this shows a little bit of everything added. So we named the mechanism. The
design is much better too.
Yeah,
like
the more female. And we all we have the same actress throughout. There's more dimensionalization in this story. There's a hypnotic open loop in there. As you read this page, you'll understand why. I'm stacking like the hypnotism here. You'll understand why. When you use the same at-home method in just 3 seconds a day, so on and so forth. We also added an AOV money close here, which I'm nearly certain Stefan has presented on in the past. I really hope those broken images are not an issue. I will also mention, diving into this, yeah, okay, they brought up this 5-second finger test. When I researched this, which is basically that, it's the ratio, I have long nails, but the ratio between these two fingers. If your ring finger is longer, then you have the X hormone, okay, something like that. That's the 5-second finger test.
Yeah, I think you were exposed to more testosterone in the womb, I think, is something like that. Something like that.
Something like that. So, and they relate that to why you're losing your hair here. But most women, and this is targeted towards women, but we found out that most women would fail. Yeah, don't have. Yeah. So you gotta double check every little thing here. So we got rid of the 5-finger finger test, added the AOV money close. Yeah, we did nearly everything. We added the metaphor with the anchor, which I believe could be beefed up even more. And in this case, a lot of the interiority and the dimensionalization go hand in hand because
Okay, last question. Well, actually 2 questions. If you could only do one of these 5, but you were working on something that could use all 5, is it in that order? Is like, would you dimensionalize first? Like if you could only do one, or?
That's a great question.
I mean, obviously you're a pro, so you would want to do all of them, but which one, like if you were forced to only do one, which one would you do? And then which one would you do next? Like
naming, and I was
get the most bang for the buck with the name.
Yeah, most bang for the buck with the name. So I was going to start with naming today, but I know it's a little bit more ephemeral. And so in presenting,
it's incredibly important. No doubt.
In presenting, I wanted to start dimensionalizations because that's like fill in the blank.
Right. Very cool. So that was the question I wanted to ask. And then the question I ask everyone is, because like it's a great way to just make sure we didn't miss anything. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have, or anything that you were hoping to add that you didn't get a chance to? And if it was a question that I didn't ask, what would be the question and the answer? Like anything that we didn't cover?
You're amazing. I appreciate you so much, Rich. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you, and I thank you for sharing all this. And yeah, I mean, look, most copy does not dimensionalize anywhere near enough. Most people don't use enough metaphors. Most names suck, and most people don't hold the tension. So totally agree with all of these, and really cool that you helped people figure out a way to actually do it. So
thank you. I would love for anybody who, actually hella leverages this stuff by actually doing it and not just thinking about it to reach out to me and let me know how they got on.
And there'll be a link below. There'll be a link below this video. So you'll just have to tell us, our team, like where you want people to be sent to. Could be, anything, a product you have or anything else. So they'll have a way of getting in touch with you for sure. And looking forward to hearing about our client success from it. So once again, thanks. And hopefully you'll come back again sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, we'll speak then. Bye-bye.